Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inter, and welcome back to the channel, and Smite 2 Data Mining put out a Hastur reveal yesterday that I originally wasn't really going to cover on the channel, to be honest. Mainly because there's not a whole lot of info to actually cover here. There's basically a model leak for him, and that's about it. There's no real, new info on, what he's actually going to be in-game or anything like that. But it appears like it's caused a lot of controversy within the community. There was a couple of Reddit posts. I've seen a lot of people in my Discord, and even a couple of my YouTube comments talking about this kind of stuff, and how they're not super pleased with how the model looks. And that's just kind of strange to me, but let's just jump right in. So the model is down here. There's some basic information on him, but it's just like base stats and stuff like that. It doesn't really matter. And from previous data mining, we know that he's using Kukulkan's 1 as a placeholder for his 1 and some kind of Kali placeholder for his ultimate. That's about it. But yeah, here's the model, and it caused a lot of controversy because, yeah, it looks pretty bad in these screenshots, right? Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. You know, a lot of people would say it looks pretty bad in these screenshots. You know, if we go to one of these and zoom in a little bit more, you can see it doesn't look great. And I think there's kind of two sides of the coin to the complaints with this. One of which I think is reasonably valid, and one of which I think is completely invalid, and people are idiots if they're trying to make that argument. So we'll start off with the one where I think people are idiots. Comparing this model and trying to act as if it is how it's going to look in-game when it's released is just the stupidest thing I've ever heard. That's not at all how it's going to be. These are data mined models with no lighting, minimal rigging, no animations, no special effects, none of that stuff. This is not how it's going to look in-game, and we can see that from various examples. Take a look at the Joust data mining that they put out when Joust was originally being developed. Look how bad some of this stuff looks. You know, this is what data mining ends up looking like. You know, it's pulling very basic things from the files with no lighting, no effects, none of that stuff. Look how bad some of this Joust architecture looks. Look how bad this dragon looks. And then consider how good it looks in-game on the Joust map when it's properly implemented. You know, it's a night and day difference. Look at some of these minions and stuff like that. They don't look great. And that's because lighting and effects and the way they are placed in the game and all of that kind of stuff makes a massive difference. So I think looking at this data mined Hastur model and saying, oh, that's how it's going to look in-game, it looks terrible, that's not at all going to be the case. And also, you know, just based on Hastur as a being and Hastur as this data mined model, he's going to be very animation driven, I would imagine. You know, the way he floats, the way his cloth physics work, and the way his tentacles move and stuff like that is going to be a big part of how he looks in game. And obviously you can't see any of that when he's just A posing and his tentacles are vertically downwards and not moving or anything like that. I think trying to take this as some kind of, you know, solidified, this is how he's going to look in game, this is final, is really a dumb argument in my opinion. I think anyone making that argument has no idea what they're talking about in terms of game design and probably hasn't read any previous data mining posts. Because you can see it from some of these skins as well. You know, these skins, does that look good? No, it really doesn't. That's because there's no lighting, there's no anything else going on, there's no effects, there's no animation, there's none of that. This is literally just a model pulled from the files with, you know, none of the extra frills that will make a god look good. You know, if you data mined Aladdin's model or Barry's model or Mordred's model in this kind of stage of development, it would also look shit. That is how it is with data mining. They're not pulling, you know, in-game screenshots that high-res have taken that they put in the game. That's not how it works. They're literally pulling the in-game files that will create this render. They may have even created the renders themselves from the in-game files. I'm not entirely sure if that's how it works. It's probably not. But yeah, they're just literally pulling the in-game model with no extra stuff going on. So I think anyone that tries to make the argument that they're using this as a justification for saying Hastur's going to look terrible when he releases, that's just dumb in my opinion. You know, that's not at all going to be how it works. He's going to look a lot better, 10 times better than he does in these data mining pictures. But then there's the other side of the coin that people are complaining about with the Hastur data mining, and that is just the design in general. You know, they're not complaining about the quality, they're saying they don't like the design in general. And again, I think some of that will also come down to how it will look in game, you know, because it looks really weird when the tentacles are just straight vertically down. These will probably be swirling around underneath him as he moves in game or something like that. And you know, especially some of these ones where he's A posing, you know, it's obviously going to look terrible. You know, when he's actually walking around in game, it's definitely going to look a lot better than that. And I think that will alleviate some of the concerns that people have on the general design. Some of the things I've seen is, you know, he's not really a full tentacle monster, but that's relatively lore accurate in terms of Hastur's human form that he takes. You know, they could have gone two different directions with that. They could have gone this direction where it's you know, he's in the yellow robes, he's got the crown on and stuff like that, or they could have gone the more Lovecraftian horror direction, which I don't think would have worked anyway. There's a reason, you know, Cthulhu has a physical form in Smite 1. He's not just a massive tentacles. You can't really depict that very easily and make it look sensible. So I think going this direction makes a lot of sense. People are complaining that he's looking a little skinny as well, but again, I think that's relatively lore accurate. accurate. I think he's meant to look a bit eerie, you know, almost like Slender Man style, you know, where he doesn't really look like a real human. I think that's kind of intended. But yeah, those kind of complaints, they're a little bit more valid if they're complaining about the overall design and that they don't like it. I think it will still look better in game, and people might change their tune a little bit when he does eventually get revealed fully in game. It will look a lot better. But again, I think anyone complaining about the actual quality of this and assuming that when he releases in game it's going to look like this, they're just absolutely stupid and wrong, in my opinion. There was this Reddit post that someone made. I'm not going to harp on it too much because it's got 0 points. It's 42% upvoted. People clearly disagree with this guy. This isn't the general community sentiment, but I have seen this kind of sentiment from a few people. So this guy says, I'm the biggest fan of Hastur, says so in my flair. So out of everyone was super excited for Hastur's release. I've got 3 tattoos of the funny yellow man and I love him. Okay, now here's to hope the recent data mining is a joke or is scrutiny or something else, because fucking hell, Hastur's model is probably the worst model we've seen since the Lord Farquaad Hades skin. Before people say we haven't seen it properly rigged up, the lighting is bad, no, it doesn't matter. Look at the model, it's some random ass yellow mage from RuneScape. Again, saying that, you know, properly rigged lighting is bad, no effects, that is absolutely relevant. It will influence people's perception. If people never saw this and then the model just released in game with all of the extra frills, people would not be complaining this much, I don't think. It influences people's initial perception when that's the first thing they see. Even subconsciously, even people don't want to admit it like this guy, it will absolutely influence that. Look at the model, it's like some random ass yellow mage from RuneScape. I guess you can maybe make an argument that it looks a little bit generic, but I don't think it looks that bad, and I think it's relatively lore accurate for Hastur. You know, he's got the tentacles, which again, you know, in game his tentacles and his arms will probably be, you know, moving around and stuff like that. It will look a lot better. He's got the crown, he's got the yellow robes, he's got his face hidden, he's got all of those features that I think, you know, would lead you to think that it is Hastur and it's not just some generic yellow mage from RuneScape. I really don't know how you fuck up a yellow robe with tendrils and a mask, but somehow they have. They over-designed it so much and it just looks cheap and pathetic compared to the models of Aladdin and Princess Barry. I don't really know what this means. They over-designed it. I'd say if anything, they even under-designed it a little bit. You know, what's over-designed about this? He's saying simultaneously that it looks like a generic mage from an RPG, but then also saying it's over-designed. I don't really understand how that works. No Shepherd's Crook either. I guess that's something from the lore. I don't really know about that. For a team that prides themselves on reading up on the lore and background of a character and giving them details from the lore, to be given some goofy flash game mage. Again, you know, flash game, he's trying to make the argument that, you know, this is how it's going to look in game. It's not going to look anything like that in game. Also, in terms of the Shepherd's Crook, it's actually possible that is still a thing. I'm not saying it is. It might not be, but a lot of the time when data mine models happen like this, they're not depicted with their weapon. You know, if you see Bologna, she's not going to be depicted with her sword. She's going to be depicted in like an A pose with no weapon in hands, because the weapons are kind of a separate thing to the model. The weapons aren't attached to the model a lot of the time, I think is how that works. So it is definitely possible that in one of these hands he's going to be holding the Shepherd's Crook, and that's what he's going to use as his weapon, which I think would make sense, you know, unless he's firing out like blasts, you know, assuming he's going to be ranged. He looks like he's going to be ranged. He could be melee though, but assuming he's going to be ranged, unless he's like firing blasts out of his hands, which I guess is possible, he will probably have a weapon or a staff of some kind. And so it's definitely possible that the Crook will be there on his release, but crooks and weapons and stuff like that generally aren't attached to the base model, so when the model is data mined, you often don't see that stuff. But again, that's just my speculation. It's entirely possible that he's not going to have the Crook or anything, and he does just use his hands as weapons. Maybe he's melee, maybe he's ranged and fires blasts out of his hands. I don't really know, but it's definitely possible that the weapon is just not showing up in the data mining, because again, it's data mining, you know, it's early stuff. When we see him in game, form your full opinion. That's the thing that really like messes me up about this whole like controversy thing. I call it controversy because again, I don't think that many people are like that outraged about it. I've just seen some people in my Discord, and I've seen people like this Reddit post. But again, this Reddit post is 42% upvoted. It's not the majority opinion of the community, but there has been some controversy. But I just think it's really stupid to like form any kind of opinion based on data mining that's 5 weeks out and has no lighting and no effects and none of that stuff. Forming an opinion based on these models is just absolutely stupid, I think. Come back to me in 5 weeks when we see him revealed in game, and if you still don't like the way the model looks, you still don't like the design, then your opinion is valid. At this point, with like data mined stuff like this, I don't think your opinion is valid if you're trying to form a full concrete opinion on whether you like or dislike it just based on this. But anyway, he continues, only reason I'm making this post is to bring early attention to this because it's an easy fix. Make it a simple yellow robe, no weird white and random colors. Again, he's saying like it's too simple because it looks like just a generic mage, but then he's also saying remove all of the other stuff. I'm very confused. Random shoulder pads and cape cloths. Make the mask a simple white mask with eye holes. Damn fix. It's such a shame as well. You think of the rigging in Hekate's cape and think that's what Hastur's entire body could do, since he's complaining about rigging when he's not even seen any animation. I don't even understand how that works. He's saying like lighting and rigging don't matter and then complaining about rigging. You've not seen the rigging. That makes no sense to me. Again, don't go hate on this guy. Don't like, downvote his post if you disagree with it or whatever. But don't go hate on this guy. He's got his own opinion, but this makes no sense to me. So yeah, here's hoping the data mining is a joke and this is a tester model for a Hades skin and not the final release of entire new god. It will definitely not be a tester model. I imagine that is probably what we're going to be seeing, but obviously not in this form. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. There's not really that much information on like how Hastur's actually going to work in game, but there was a model leak and it's caused some kind of like, controversy, I guess, within the community. Basically, TLDR, this is not how it's going to look in game. Wait until you see him in game to form your full opinion. If you still don't like the model, then fair enough. You don't like it. That's absolutely a valid opinion, but I wouldn't form a full opinion of what you think of the model based on, A, posing, no animation, no lighting, no rigging, no effects, none of that stuff. But yeah, there you go. I wasn't originally going to make a video on Hastur, to be honest, because all we got was a data mine model, which again, I didn't really want to, talk about too much because it's just a data mined model. I would much rather see him in game before I form my full opinion on it, and there's no like kit information or anything. There's just like some base stat stuff, which obviously doesn't matter. But yeah, the main reason I'm making this video is just to kind of address the controversy a little bit and how I think most of it is stupid. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Obviously, let me know your own thoughts on Hastur down below, and I will catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.